That's an awesome opportunity to bless one of our local outreach partners in that way. And make sure you go vote for the Washington Family Hope Center. Also, if you want more information on the Washington Family Hope Center, you can talk to our outreach pastor, Keith Golubski, or you can find one of our youth pastors, Jordan Woodring. They're both highly involved in that ministry, so I would love for you guys to learn more about that ministry and what they're doing. It's pretty awesome. Here's what I want to do. I want to start off with like an exercise. I'm going to start with an exercise with you guys to start to kind of get us thinking on the same page. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about your day. Think about your normal, average routine every day, and I want you to think about what that entails. Okay, so if you're like me, the first thing of your day is normally a snooze button, right? Anybody else? Anybody? Okay, I'm the only lazy one in here. That's fine. Okay. Normally, it's multiple snooze buttons for me, or I just go back to sleep, and then my wife has to wake me up later, or my kids wake me up later, whatever it is. I don't know what your morning includes. Maybe it's waking up, devotional, a prayer, a workout, getting ready for the day, watching the morning news, read a newspaper, check Facebook, make breakfast, get the kids ready for school, pack lunches, fix hair, take kids to school, get yourself to work or school or whatever, right? And we're just in the morning, right? Like this is all before 8 a.m. right now is what we're talking about. I mean, and we haven't even got to grocery shopping, cleaning, cooking, planning, phone calls, conversations, meetings, sports practices, extracurricular activities, laundry, homework, binge watching Netflix is somewhere in there as well, right? Like there's a lot that we do each and every day. I think it would be beneficial for you sometime this week to think through your everyday, think through your normal average day, and list out every single thing that you do. And as you do that, I want you to ask this question of yourself. How does worship fit in to your day? How does worship fit into your day? Recently at the Weece household, one of our average mundane things that we do pretty often now is potty training, is what we're in the thick of right now. Right now we're in the middle of potty training our 2.5-year-old son. And hold on, before we go anywhere else, really, my wife is in the middle of potty training. I don't want to take any of the glory here. She's the one she's the real MVP. She's the one doing the work here. I'm just the reinforcement that shows up after work, right? And tries to help out, okay? Tries to, sub in or whatever and take what I can, right? But our 2.5-year-old Sam is starting to figure it out a little bit. But he, for the last few weeks, there's been several occasions that when Malia would say, "Hey, come on, let's go. It's time to try to go potty," or whatever, she'd set an alarm. Okay, it's time to try again, Sam. He'd be like, "Okay, yeah, let's go potty," and all cute and everything, and go straight to the toilet, whatever, and wait for you to pull his pants down so he'd get up on the toilet and try to go potty, right? But there were several times that Sam, whenever Malia would say, "Hey, let's go try to go potty," would scream and run the opposite direction and go to our back room or go into his room, and if you didn't follow him quickly, he was going to find a corner and just start going in his pants in the corner, right? And it's the nastiest thing ever, right? Like, I didn't realize, like, once you have kids, you'll realize this, like, whenever they just, like, pee their pants, it, like, gets, like, puddles in their shoes, you know what I'm saying? And it's not like we got 6 pair of shoes, you got like 2 that you rotate, so it's like, okay, now we got to wash these and let them dry and hope you don't do it again later today because then you won't have any shoes to wear, But that's what Sam would do, and I don't know about you guys, but whenever I think about my normal average day, like, and how worship fits into my day, I don't think that like potty training would be in the worship category. I don't think that's the first category I'd put it in. I think it would be under necessary parenting, but not under worship. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it would be under that same category. You know what I'm saying? And maybe it's true for most of us in this room. Like, when we think of worship, we have some areas of our life that we would easily identify as worship, right? Like what we're doing right now in this room. It's worship. I think we would all pretty much agree that this is worship. When we gather together, when we encourage one another, when we hear a word preached, when we stand and sing praises to God, like this is what we would think of worship. And maybe there's some other things. Maybe it's your morning Devo time. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's listen to K-Love on your way to work or whatever, right? But I grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a pastor, and we were at the church Sunday, Wednesday, and multiple days in between, right? But even then, like, the tradition that I grew up with was, man, if we say we're going to worship, it meant, well, I'm going to come sit in a pew with other believers surrounding me, and we're going to stand and sing praises to God, right? That was my idea of worship, and that's not a bad idea of worship. That is definitely worship. But what we're hoping to communicate through our series, Every Day, is that when we are transformed by the love of Jesus and by the power of his gospel, Like every part of our lives becomes worship. Every single area of our lives is worship. That's what we want to talk about. And honestly, I'm really excited about this series, not just because I really want my potty training experience to be worshipful. It's not that, right? But it's because I'm excited about how this impacts every single one of us. There's a world out there that needs to see people who are worshiping God in every single thing that they do, right? So I'm excited about what this could mean if we grab a hold of this as a church, what God wants to do for us as individuals in our homes, in our workplaces, in our classrooms, our communities, in our church, and in this world. I think God wants to use every part of our lives to be worship for Him. So here's the thing. We've got these two words up here, every day, and they have different meanings. They look like the same thing, but they have different meanings. The first word is an adjective. It's really used to describe the mundane, ordinary things that we do, okay? That's what the first everyday kind of really means. The second one is two different words that every day describes each day of our lives. So what we're trying to communicate is that God wants to take this everyday, our ordinary, mundane lives, and each day present it as an offering to Him. This is what Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1. This is the Message version. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you, take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing that you can do for Him. Now today, what I want to do is I want to talk about one central theme that's kind of throughout all of Romans chapter 12, which is where we're going to be for the next 4 weeks as we go through this series, every day. As we go through this, there's a central theme, and that central theme is just simply worship. So today we're going to talk about everyday worship. And when I think about everyday worship, as we look at Romans chapter 12, verse 1, I think there's several things that we could say. I want to say 3 this morning. First thing I want to say is everyday worship is a sacrifice. Everyday worship is a sacrifice. That's probably the version of Romans chapter 12 that you've heard more often, right, is to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. I don't know about you, but whenever I think of sacrifice, especially on a weekend like this, a weekend that we remember 20 years ago, the attacks on the World Trade Center, on the Pentagon, 9/11, that whole thing that happened, it's hard for me not to think about those men and women that ran to the chaos when everybody else was running away from the chaos, or running into that building that was on fire, that was structurally unsound when everybody's trying to get out. It's hard for me not to think about the men and women who have sacrificially given their lives since then or before then. And I think this is something that everybody that was alive at that time, I think we're all going to remember where we were when we found out, when we heard the news, right? I remember I was a 6th grader, and I was going from my homeroom into my history class, and we walk into the history class. In the front corner of the room, there was a TV that was on. I was like, oh, we're watching a video today, I guess. I don't know. And all we saw on the TV was one building that was smoke coming from it. And in the back left corner, my history teacher was crying at her desk. And I was like, this is weird. I don't know what's going on here. And we all sat down, and a few minutes later, we saw live on the TV in our 6th grade history class, the second plane hit the other tower. And I don't think I realized in that moment as a 6th grade student, I don't know if I would expect any 6th grade students to be able to, I don't think I realized how important or how big of a deal what was happening was. And I don't think I realized even in the days and weeks and months and years to come, I don't think I realized the importance of how our country responded, the steps that we took, or even like in those moments, what the kind of steps that people were taking in those moments. I don't think I realized the importance of them, but as the older I get, the more thankful I am because of the sacrifice of so many people in our country. I saw this last year, and this kind of like helped me have a new realization of it. I saw this picture last year, and there's this caption with it, and it says, barely noticeable in the bottom of this photo is the New York Fire Department ladder 118 on their way to the Twin Towers. Every single person on that truck died trying to rescue people that day. They were literally heading toward their own death when this photo was taken. They answered the call, and they gave everything. And I'm thankful for men and women who have done that for years before this event and ever since, of the men and women who have laid their lives down, not only as first responders, but as people in our military, as reserves. I'm thankful for those men and women. But I'll say this in the same breath, like not every single one of us is a first responder. Not every single one of us is going out and laying our lives down or putting our life in harm's way on every single day, day in and day out, like when we go out to work. So maybe this everyday worship as a sacrifice isn't completely the same as that, although I think it's appropriate that we think about that. I also think, like, when I think of the word sacrifice, man, it's hard to get up and preach a sermon and say the word sacrifice and not say the name Jesus, right? I think it would be pretty foolish of me and probably unbiblical of me to not say the name Jesus standing up here when we mention the word sacrifice, when we're preaching a sermon from his word, right? Like, this is what brings us together. It is what gives us hope and life. We are lost without it. It's what binds us together across all dividing walls and barriers. It's what breaks down the wall of hostility that stands between us, and it helps unite us stronger than any other thing can. The sacrifice that Jesus made once and for all on the cross for us. But in the same breath, right, I am not God, and neither are you. We are not the Messiah, the Savior of the world. We are not like the Son of Man, the one sent from God. We're not God in the flesh, right? So maybe our everyday worship as a sacrifice doesn't completely mean the exact same thing. Here's what I think Paul is getting at. I think Paul, when he's talking about offering up a sacrifice, I think he's trying to get these readers to think through the old temple language. I think he's trying to get them to think about these different sacrifices that would be offered. One sacrifice they would do as a sin offering. They would come and spill the blood of an animal and then confess of their sin and ask for forgiveness. But as they do that, right, as Paul is like writing this letter, he already stands forgiven, right? Like that sin offering has already been offered up by Jesus on the cross, right? So this isn't a sin offering. I think it's a different kind of offering. And there's another kind of offering they would have offered in the temple, and it would have been this whole burnt offering. This whole burnt offering, it was a valuable animal from your flock without spot or blemish. It was always totally burnt up, right? It was completely consumed. It represented a complete devotion, a consecration to God. And this is what I think we're getting at. Like when we talk about everyday worship as a sacrifice, it means that you are fully at God's disposal. Like that he's the one who calls the shots. Like you are not in charge of you anymore, right? There's nothing that is left. I think that's probably an obvious thought when we think about something being sacrificed. Like there's nothing left of the sacrifice. Like there's nothing left of it. You are completely given up as an offering to God. There's nothing is held back. Everything is given, and everything you do, every decision you make, every area of your life, you are his. And here's what I think. I think we love this idea. I think we love this idea of surrendering our life to God, and I think we agree with it even, for the most part, but I think we have a hard time living it out, and rightfully so. It's a hard thing to live out, because really, when we say you are fully at God's disposal, it means you are not in charge of you anymore, right? That's a hard thing for us to admit. I mean, I got myself here. I'm the one, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. My house is mine because I earned it. My job is mine because I earned it, right? But we pull ourselves up and we've got this pride stuff, but really when it comes down to it, when we say we're fully at God's disposal, it means I'm not in charge of me anymore. He's the Lord of my life. He calls the shots in my life, right? It's not me, it's him. And there's several practical things for us. It means when we're fully at God's disposal, it means we serve rather than expecting somebody else to serve us. It means that we give rather than hoping to receive from somebody else. It means that we put to death the things of this world instead of playing around in them because they make us feel good. Right? It means that we look at this word as authoritative in our lives, as the authority in our lives. This is what we go to. This is what guides and directs our lives, is this word, this truth right here. This is absolute truth, and we submit to its authority in our lives. It means that we live in such a way that other people obviously see the fruit of the Spirit at work in our lives, right? They see us and they see love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control. That's what they see in us, right? It means that we take responsibility for our actions, right? That we confess and we repent and we live in the ways of the Lord, right? Everyday worship is a sacrifice. And it's not easy, but it's necessary. So if everyday worship is a sacrifice and it really means like that you are fully at God's disposal, then I think it begs the question, what is something in your life right now that you are not letting God have complete control over? Like, what is something that you're still holding on to, still trying to call the shots on in your own life? What's something that you're not letting him have? Because everyday worship as a sacrifice is letting him have everything. It's complete devotion to him. It's complete surrender to him. That's what it's really all about. Like, what is something that's in your life right now that you're not letting God have complete control over? I think everyday worship is a sacrifice, but I also think everyday worship is continual. It's continual. And most of you guys know I've got several kids. I got 3 kids, a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old. We got another on the way sometime in the next couple weeks, right? We're going to have another little girl. We're excited about that. One of the most frustrating things about having kids, can I just be honest with you? One of the most frustrating things about having kids is whenever you set ground rules, like you set expectations with your kids and you set up, this is the way things are going to go, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're not going to do, whatever, right? And then everybody goes to sleep. That's what happens. Like, it seems like everybody just goes to bed and they wake up the next morning and my kids are doing the exact same thing that I just told them not to do, like peeing in a corner or standing on top of the couch or whatever, right? Like they're doing something they're not supposed to do. And I'm like, hey, we just talked about this like yesterday or 20 minutes ago or whatever, right? Like you just got spankings for this and went to timeout and now you're doing it again. What are you thinking? And they look at me with like bewilderment, like, I thought that was a yesterday thing, I thought we were done with that. We're still doing that? You're still holding me to that standard? It's like, yeah, of course I'm still holding you to that standard. This is a rule and expectation we set up, right? You don't pee in the corner, you pee in the toilet, right? One of the pastors at my church I grew up at, his name's Ryan. His wife's name's Rachel. They were expecting their 4th child, and she was far along, so she was pretty big. And I don't know if you know this, when your stomach grows exponentially in a short amount of time, it limits mobility. I know that, just not to quite the full extent that most pregnant women do, okay? But it limits your mobility a little bit, right? And their youngest son was about 18 months old. She's pretty far along, and he realized pretty quickly that when he got in trouble with mom, that he could just lay flat on the ground, and she wouldn't be able to do anything. Like, she wouldn't be able to discipline him, or she wouldn't be able to get hold of him, or he just lay flat. 18 months old, right? Like, that kid's going to do some big things in life, So, and his dad said this was a brilliant way to avoid the discipline of his mom. His mom said that one of his favorite times to do it was right after bath time. So he'd be sopping wet, completely naked, and just laying flat on the floor. Made him really slippery, even that much harder to pick up, And what a turd, right? So, but that's a pretty good picture of what it is to raise kids, right? This idea that Paul says in Romans chapter 12 that we're supposed to offer our bodies as living sacrifice literally could be translated like a living killing, right? One scholar actually points it out that this is like the living part really could point to the fact that this is constant. This is a continual sacrifice. Like, you're constantly offering yourself to God. Like, you're constantly putting yourself up on the altar. This is why Jesus says, whoever wants to be my disciple will deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. This is a continual act. We are continually reminding ourselves of our dependence and subjugation to God, right? Like, this is what it means. We continually renew our position as wholly obedient and at God's disposal. Now, it doesn't mean that we get to look at his word or hear a sermon and, choose to obey what God is asking us to do one day and then the next day lay flat on the floor and pretend like he can't get us, right? Like, that's the whole thing, right? This isn't like we get to choose one day versus the other. This is a continual, you offer yourself up to God as an offering, as a sacrifice. That's what it is. I submit to him continually. I am obedient to him and what he wants from me continually, right? This is what we're talking about. Submitting to Christ is an everyday decision, not just a one-time decision over here, right? Like, it's an everyday. I lay my life down on the altar for his use, for his disposal. I am going to be used for God, right? I love what Michael DeFazio says about this. He says, Paul is talking about obedience in worship language because obedience and worship are the same thing. You hear that? Obedience and worship are the same thing. And we're just talking about this. You heard Robin talk about our latest episode on our podcast. We were talking about this, this idea, this every day, and we talked about how like it can kind of seem daunting, right? And John Michael put it pretty eloquently. He said, every day is a lot of days. And I agree with him, right? Every day is a lot of days, you know? Like, he's right. This can become overwhelming when we think about this idea that we've got to continually do this. Like, it's an each and every day thing, right? So what I want you to do, I think it helps if we just think one day at a time. I don't think it makes it, like, easier, because I don't think that's what the Bible promises at all whenever we're talking about laying our lives down on the altar, right? I don't think we're promised that it's going to be easy, but I think it makes it more simplified whenever you just think about today. God, what do I need to submit to you today? Like, what is the thing that I've been holding on to that I just need to let you have today? I need to let you have control over this today. I need to give you this today. Yes, everything is what we're supposed to say. I'm supposed to submit everything, but maybe it's something specific. Maybe it's, man, I got to have a tough conversation today, and I've been like racking my brain. I've been getting myself all worked up. Maybe I just need to let God be the one who has control over this. Maybe it's like, man, I've been struggling with this coworker. I don't know how I'm going to interact with them. Like, God, I just need you to have this today. I need you to help me with this. I want to glorify you through this. I want to offer this as a sacrifice to you. Maybe it's your children who have just been like getting on your last nerve all over and over and over again. You just need, God, I just need you to help me to act in a loving way towards my children and to parent with grace. Maybe it's like, I just need like my future. I'm just worried about my future so much and what I'm going to do next, what's coming. I don't know about like even the future of our country. Like, I'm just worried about all this stuff, right? Whatever it is, like, God, I just need you to have this. I know you can handle this. I need you to have it. What are we still holding on to? What do we need to submit to God today? But I also think, I think like everyday worship is a sacrifice, and it's a continual sacrifice. But I also think, man, our everyday worship, it's logical. Like, it makes sense. I don't know about you, but whenever I was growing up, we read the real Bible, you know, like the NIV 1984 translation, okay? So that's what I memorized Romans 12:1 as, was NIV 1984. Those are the scriptures, blessed by heaven, okay? No, okay? That's the real translation, right? So I memorized this, and it said like, this is, like whenever Paul gets to the end, he says, this is your spiritual worship, or this is your true and proper worship. Some translations say that this is truly the way to worship him, but all of those translations kind of fall short of what the actual Greek word is here. The actual Greek word is the word logikon, is what it is. And it's really, I mean, it sounds pretty familiar, right? Because it's literally logical. Like, this is your logical worship. This is your rational worship. This is what makes sense. And really, I got to ask the question, how? Like, how does this make sense? How in the world does it make sense for me to, like, sacrifice myself all the time? Right? How does that make sense? And I think Paul's got the answer for us. Romans chapter 12, verse 1, the NIV version. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. This is your logical worship. This is your rational worship. Did you hear it? In view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Now, that's the only way it makes sense for us to every day sacrifice continually, every single day, sacrifice ourselves on the altar and let God use us however we want. Because when we have a good view of who he is and what he has done, when we realize the mercy that he's freely given us, this grace that he's given us, when we realize, as what Paul talks about all in the whole book of Romans, that we are justified by grace through faith in Jesus, right? When we come to realize that, that's the only thing that makes sense. It makes sense that we would then offer our bodies as a living sacrifice because of what God has done. And what has God done? Who is God? What has he done? Like, ultimately, God is above us, and he is beyond us. We can't fathom him. We can't fathom his greatness or his purity. We can't wrap our minds around his holiness. And he saw your condition, and he saw my condition, and he saw that we were destined to spend an eternity in suffering in hell away from him, apart from him. And you know what God did? He said, hey, you guys need to get your act together. or else that's what's going to happen. You're going to suffer away from me. No, he didn't just say stuff from his throne and say, hey, figure it out. Hope you figure it out. No, he came to us. Like he came to us in the form of a human, right? He came to us in Jesus, God in the flesh, right? And he lived a perfect life, and he took the penalty that I deserved because of my wickedness and that you deserve because of your wickedness and your sin, right? He took on our penalty on the cross, and he defeated death once and for all, and he rose again, and he tells us that if we repent of our sin and we believe in him, that we will have everlasting life, and he gives us a spirit, right, to live in us. And he has given us his spirit to walk with us and to remind us and to teach us and to empower us to do everything and to remind us of this hope that we have in him. And this is the truth of the gospel. And if you haven't experienced the truth of the gospel, if you've never given your life over to Jesus before, right now is the time. Today is the day to do it. To give your life over to him. If you haven't submitted your life to his rule and to his reign, you're not living your life to the full, right? You're not living the life, ultimately you're going to keep chasing things, and it's not going to pan out for you. You're still going to be left feeling empty. You're still going to be left feeling lost or confused. He's the only one who leads us to life and life to the full, right? This is what is offered to you today. Is if you've never accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you can come and do that. We've got everything you need right here today. Don't wait. But here's the truth. The gospel is not just for people who haven't heard the gospel. The gospel is also for us who have. The gospel is the power for all of us, for all who believe. It is our motivation. This is ultimately what motivates us to live for Jesus every single day, right? This is it. This is what makes our everyday worship a continual sacrifice. It's because of who God is and what he has done. And here's what I want to say to you this morning is simply this. Your view of God will determine the volume of your worship. Your view of God will determine the volume of your worship. Now, what I'm not talking about when I say volume isn't I need you to scream in here when we're singing songs, right? Okay, please. I've sat next to a lot of you over the last 10 years. That's not what we need, okay? Respectfully, that's not what we need, okay? I'm just kidding, okay? That was a joke. Please don't be offended. You all have angelic voices, okay? But that's not, if you've been listening to the sermon at all, that's not what we're talking about here, right? Worship isn't just confined to what happens within these walls right here, or in these pews, or when we stand and whenever John Michael starts strumming his guitar up here, right? That's not what worship is. Worship is that, but it's not just that. You realize that, right? This is what I'm talking about when I say volume is the quantity of your worship. How you view God, and if you view him as Lord of all and sovereign and sustainer and the one who came and died for you, and you realize that he loves you immensely even though you've done nothing to earn that love, man, the greater that view comes clearly in your mind, the more you'll worship him outside of this room. The more other people will be able to see that you're worshiping him outside of this room. That's who you're living for outside of this room. That's what's on the line here. Your view of God and of who he is and all that he's done for you, it will ultimately determine your worship for him in every area of your life. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to sing a song that most of you probably haven't heard before, and it's a simple song of surrender. First thing I want to say about this song is I don't want you to go into this song thinking, okay, now it's time to worship. You've missed the point of this whole sermon, right? Now I'm going to stand up and I'm going to sing this song, and this is going to be worship to God. Because everything you've done so far today has been meant to be worship for God, right? We've given our gifts to him to forward his mission, right? We've gathered together. We've been encouraged by one another. We've opened up the word together and heard his word proclaimed. We've fellowshipped outside of this room. You put socks and shoes on your kids this morning, right? All those things are meant to be worshipful, right? Every single part of our lives is meant to be worshipful, but really, if we're honest with ourselves, I think there's something that we might not be letting God have. And there's this refrain in this song that just says, "This is my surrender." I want you to think about what's that thing in your life that you're not letting him have. Maybe it's that relationship. Maybe it's that sin. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your time. Maybe it's your priorities. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your own time, and you just haven't made time to be in His Word, to be in prayer with Him. Maybe it's God, I just need you to be my motivation this week. I need to be rooted in you and let you be my motivation this week. I don't know what that is for you, but as we sing those words, this is my surrender, I want you to think about, what am I holding on to? What areas of my life do I need to surrender to Jesus today? But there's another part of this song that says, shake up the ground of all my tradition and break down the walls of all my religion, because your way is better. And here's the thing, I think I've been following Jesus since I was baptized when I was 7. So I've been following Jesus for a long time, right? And I was raised in the church, right? I was raised with tradition kind of all around me. And I was raised in this religion called Christianity, right? But I think sometimes we can get stuck in routines of what worship should look like and what it shouldn't look like. And when we break ourselves away from what the routine is, I think Jesus has something better for us. When you realize that it's not about this routine, it's about a relationship with Him. It's about being with Him all the time. It's about figuring out how can I worship you with this conversation I'm about to have, or this coffee that I'm about to have with somebody, or this lunch I'm about to, or whatever, or how can I worship you right now when I'm just super frustrated that my son just peed in the corner again? How can I worship you right now? It sounds ridiculous, but that's at the basis of this whole series. This every day is that we figure out, Jesus' way is better whenever I submit everything to Him. He's got a better life for me. He's got a better way for me whenever I just give everything to Him. He knows what's best for me, and He knows what's better for me too. This past week, our students got to hear about the night and day purpose that Jesus gives us. This different purpose that Jesus gives us. And this purpose is to be disciples who make disciples, right? That was our purpose that we talked about. And our small groups were asked to discuss this question. They were instructed to discuss, share one area of your life that would be different if you were to fully live according to the purpose of being a disciple who makes disciples. And as you can guess, in 6th through 12th grade, so you can guess there's probably a wide range of answers to this question. But our C3 Youth intern, Zach Hand, is a 7th grade small group leader. And he said one of his boys kind of surprised him with this answer. He said, I think people would stop just going to church and would be actual Christians. You guys realize this is what's at stake right here? There's a world out there that needs Jesus. And it's going to take those who claim Jesus to live their lives every day in worship to Him. So maybe the question isn't, how does worship fit into your day? Maybe the question should be, how are you going to worship today? How do you worship every day? Can I give you a suggestion? Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Let's stand and let's sing.